Chapter 6. There are, in even the most orderly households, moments in which attention disperses so completely that the absence of any one individual is not immediately remarked, and such, for a short time, was the case here. Conversation continued, engagements were resumed, and it was only after a perceptible interval that a small irregularity began to suggest itself. "Have you seen Minsk?" Karlak asked, with the first note of uncertainty. "I thought he was with you," said Shadowheart. "And I thought him here," replied Karlak. Vesta, who had not till then considered the matter, looked about the room with greater care. "He was here," she said, "a moment ago." "Boo would not have allowed him to wander far," Karlak added, though with less confidence than before. "That depends," Shadowheart said quietly, "upon whether Boo is with him." There was a pause. "Minsk does not go without Boo," Karlak replied at once. "No," said Shadowheart, "he does not." The silence that followed was of a different quality than before. "What has happened?" Vesta said. For a moment no one answered. It was Astarion who spoke. "I may have," he said, with an ease that suggested the matter was of little consequence, "mentioned that I thought I saw a small creature in the garden earlier. I did not suppose it significant." Karlak turned to him at once. "You told Minsk that?" "I told him only what I believed I had seen." "And he went after it," she said. "He seemed inclined to do so." Vesta's attention sharpened. "You told him Boo was alone." "I told him," Astarion replied with perfect composure, "that I might have seen something unattended. I was careful not to alarm him unnecessarily." "You knew what he would do?" Astarion shrugged, non-committingly. "But Minsk," Karlak started to say, "is, I am sure," he said gently, "entirely capable of taking care of himself." This, though intended to reassure, did not entirely succeed. Vesta felt for the first time a flicker of unease, not yet directed, not yet defined, but present nonetheless. "Boo would not go without reason," she said. "No," Shadowheart agreed quietly. "He would not." There was a silence. Time, which had before passed without notice, now seemed to lengthen. It was at this point that Mr. Dekarios arrived. His arrival was not marked by urgency, but neither was it without purpose. He entered with Minsk at his side, whose expression, though still animated, was no longer alarmed, and in his hands. "Boo!" Minsk declared, with evident relief, as the small creature emerged, perfectly unharmed, from the fold of his cloak. "You are safe. As Minsk knew you would be, but one must never take chances with such matters." Karlak exhaled at once. "Thank the gods." Vesta stepped forward. "You found him?" Gale inclined his head. He had not, in fact, been lost. "No," Minsk said with renewed certainty. "Boo had merely chosen a position of strategic concealment." "Indeed," Gale said, not without dryness. Vesta turned slowly toward Astarion. "You were mistaken." Astarion met her gaze without hesitation. "It would appear so." There was nothing in his expression to suggest concern, only that same composed ease which had, until now, seemed so entirely in his favour. "And yet," said Shadowheart quietly, "you were very certain you had seen something." "I was careful to say I might be mistaken." "That is not the same." "No," Astarion agreed, "but it is accurate." Minsk, who had thus far been entirely occupied with Boo, now looked between them. "There was danger," he said, "but it has passed." "Yes," Gale replied, "it has." There was a pause. Vesta did not immediately speak. There are moments in which realization does not arrive all at once, but instead unfolds gradually, each thought adjusting itself to accommodate what cannot be ignored. Astarion had not lied, and that, perhaps, was the most unsettling part. he had suggested implied, allowed a conclusion to be drawn, and Minsk had acted upon it. Vesta felt with increasing clarity that something in her understanding had shifted, though whether it was her opinion of Astarion or of herself, she could not yet determine. Gale, who had said nothing further, did not seek to claim credit for what he had done, nor did he appear to expect acknowledgement. He merely stood as before, composed, but now perhaps a little more certain of his ground. There are moments in which doubt, once introduced, cannot be entirely dismissed. Yet it may, if skillfully managed, be directed elsewhere, so that what was first perceived as suspicion becomes, instead, reflection. Miss Vesta was not unaware that such a moment had arisen. She had withdrawn, not from company entirely, but from its centre, seeking, if not solitude, then at least a degree of quiet, in which her thoughts might arrange themselves into something resembling order. They did not immediately do so. That Mr. Ancunen had not lied was in one sense a relief. That he had nevertheless caused the confusion was not. She had not yet determined which she found more significant. "You are troubled." She did not start, but neither did she turn at once. That is a bold conclusion. "It is an easy one," Astarion replied. She glanced at him then. "You find me easy to read. I find you honest. That is not the same." "It is, in this case." Vesta regarded him with a steadiness that was no longer entirely unguarded. "You misled him." "I spoke carelessly," he said. "That is not the same." "No," he agreed, "but it is closer to the truth." "You knew what he would do." Astarion tilted his head as though considering the charge. "I suspected," he said, "that he might act. And you did nothing to prevent it." "I did nothing," he returned, "to cause it." Vesta's expression sharpened. "That is not true." "It is not untrue," he said gently. There was a pause. "You are very careful," she said. "I am very practiced." "At what?" "At saying only what I can defend. That is not reassuring. It is not meant to be." This, though not the answer she might have wished, had the effect of disarming her more than denial would have done. "I do not like it," she said. "No," Astarion replied softly. "I did not suppose you would." "Then why—" He did not allow her to finish. "Because," he said, with a degree of sincerity which, whether genuine or assumed, was not easily distinguished, "I would rather be questioned than trusted without reason." Vesta hesitated. "That is not what you encourage." "No," he said lightly. "And yet you question me." "That is because I must." "Then I have succeeded," she frowned. "That is not success." "It is preferable," he said, "to blind confidence." There was something in this which, though imperfect, was not entirely without merit, and Vesta, who had only just begun to distrust him, found that distrust complicated by the ease with which he admitted to fault, without appearing diminished by it. "You make it very difficult," she said, "to determine what you intend." "I make it very easy," he replied, "to see what I do." "And what is that?" "I speak with you," he said. "I seek you out. I prefer your company to that of others." "That is not an explanation." "No," he said. "It is a fact. And I am to rely upon it." "I would not ask you to rely upon anything," he said softly. "Only to observe." There was a pause. "And what do you observe?" he asked. Vesta did not answer at once. "That you are—" she began and stopped. "Yes?" "Inconsistent." "How disappointing." "And yet," she continued with visible reluctance, not entirely insincere. Astarion's expression altered, only slightly but enough. "I am flattered. You should not be." "I rarely am." There was a quiet. How fortunate that the wizard should discover what was never truly lost. You do not think well of him, Vesta said. I think, Astarion replied, that he does not think well of you. That is not the point. It is, if one is required to endure it. He has said nothing of the kind. He has not needed to. This, delivered without emphasis, settled more deeply than it ought. You are very ready, she said, to attribute motives. I am very accustomed, he returned, to recognizing them. And you believe you recognize his? I believe, Astarion said, that he has decided, and that he will not trouble himself to revise that decision. Vesta's expression hardened. That is precisely what I thought. I am sorry to confirm it. And with that, Astarion took his leave of her, and she remained where she was, alone with what had happened and what had been said. There are confirmations which bring satisfaction and others which bring relief. And though Vesta might not have distinguished between them, she felt, in this moment, something of both. The doubt had not disappeared, but it had, for the present, been given a direction. It is not always the case that correction is offered gently, for there are some who, perceiving an error, consider it neither kindness nor prudence to disguise it. Minthara Baenra did not disguise anything. She did not announce her presence, nor did she seek permission to be heard. She simply entered, and in doing so altered the atmosphere of the room in a manner both immediate and unmistakable. You have formed an opinion, she said. Vesta, who had not expected to be addressed so directly, turned at once. I have formed several. This one is incorrect. There are few statements more certain to provoke resistance, and Vesta, though not unaccustomed to contradiction, felt her composure sharpen in response. You are very confident. I am rarely otherwise. And you refer, Vesta said, to my opinion of Mr. Dekarios. I refer, Minthara replied, to your treatment of him. That is a different matter. It is the same. Vesta drew herself up. I have treated him, she said, with civility. You have treated him, Minthara returned, with dismissal. That is not unjustified. No, said Minthara. It is merely uninformed. Vesta's expression hardened. You presume a great deal. I observe a great deal, and conclude more than is warranted. I conclude precisely what is demonstrated. And what is that? Minthara regarded her, not with anger, but with something colder. That you are willing, she said, to accept the most convenient explanation of his conduct, while refusing the most reasonable. And what is that explanation? That he has exercised restraint where others would not, Vesta faltered. Only slightly, but enough. That is not how it appears. No, Minthara said, because you do not recognize it. And you do. I do. And on what authority? Minthara's expression did not change. On experience. There was a pause. You think him misunderstood? I think him precise. That is not the same. It is, when one is unwilling to make allowances for those who do not immediately comprehend him. I comprehend him perfectly, Vesta said. No, Minthara replied, you comprehend only what he has allowed you to see. And you believe you see more. I know that I do. Vesta hesitated. There are others, Minthara continued, whose conduct you do not examine with equal severity. The implication was not subtle. You refer to Mr. Ancunin. I do. And you find him preferable. I find him uncomplicated. Minthara's gaze sharpened. Yes, she said. That is precisely the problem. Vesta flushed. You speak, she said, as though I were incapable of judgment. I speak, Minthara returned, as one who has seen the consequences of poor judgment. And you believe mine poor? I believe, Minthara said, that you have chosen what is easiest to understand rather than what is most accurate. That is not a fault. It is, she said, when it leads you to misjudge a man who has done nothing to deserve it. Vesta was silent. There are few accusations more difficult to dismiss than those which are delivered without heat, and supported not by argument, but by certainty. You value fairness, Minthara continued, or you believe that you do. I do. Then you should apply it. I have. No, said Minthara. You have not. The quiet of the room deepened. You have required of him, she said, a clarity which you have not required of others. You have condemned him for not meeting a standard you have not defined. And you believe him blameless. I believe him disciplined. That is not the same. It is, Minthara replied, when one is surrounded by those who are not. Vesta's composure, though not broken, was no longer entirely secure. You are very determined, she said, to defend him. I am very determined, Minthara returned, to correct you. There was a pause. If you intend to judge him, she said at last, do so accurately. And if I do not? Minthara's gaze did not waver. Then you will be wrong. She turned as if the matter required no further discussion. At the threshold, she paused. He has already made allowances for you, she said, more than I would have. And with that she left.